What if the healing that you've been praying for isn't on the other side of a doctor's appointment, but on the other side of a letting go of fear? Today, you'll meet Renee, a wife, mom, and natural health practitioner who walked through infertility, thyroid struggles, and even emergency surgery. Her story isn't just about getting well, it's about discovering that when you put God first, He leads you to the exact healing your body and soul need. If you've ever felt pressured into decisions that just didn't sit right in your spirit, this episode is for you. Welcome to Testimony Thursday on Faith Over Pharma. These are real, raw stories of everyday people who said yes to natural healing and watched God move in amazing ways. Quick disclaimer, nothing you hear today is medical advice, a diagnosis, or even a miracle guarantee, but it might just stir your faith and blow your mind. So go grab your electrolytes and let's get into this week's story. Today's guest has spent 3 decades helping people find more life in their years, not just through natural health, but by pointing them back to the ultimate source of wisdom and healing. As a natural health practitioner, Christian life coach, and medical massage therapist, she's walked through her own valleys of infertility, chronic pain, and unexpected health crisis. And she's seen firsthand that nothing is impossible with him. Renee, I'm so honored to have you here. And I would love to hear a little bit more about your story and especially your approach to health.
Well, Susan, thank you so much for having me on and all that you're doing in this field. I have just applaud you and just keep on going, girl. That's all I have to say. But I'm Renee Swasey and I am from Pennsylvania. My first and foremost position is being an ambassador for Christ. So wherever he has me, whatever he has me doing, I am a wife, a mom of two, and I am a natural health practitioner as well as a life coach, and I wrote a book recently called Refine for Revival. But my approach on health has changed so much throughout all these years. I started out totally all natural. My first child, all natural can be, and then my second child is like, okay, well, let's just roll in some unnatural foods too. So my approach to health, even though I was a natural health practitioner back in 2003 and my son was born in 2001, it has changed so much just because of learning and growing. But then later on in life, that's where the spiritual end came in on that, you know, I was seeing all these people that were coming into me for health, but also I'm a medical massage therapist too. So I've been doing medical massage for 31 years. So whenever I would see all these people come into me, some of them were so healthy, but they still had issues. And then we had the ones who came in that were not healthy and they had a lot of issues too, but I was just like, what am I, all my education, it's about the person, Susan. That's kind of my approach right now, is each individual is so different that let me get to know you. Let me hear about your physical, your mental, and your spiritual, especially health.
I love this because I'm similarly believe the same thing that it's all intertwined. And one of my own personal frustrations, even with just mainstream medical, is that it's not really that approach. It's like you have to fit this mold or this protocol. And then if this happens, then you get usually a medication. In my case, like, oh, let's not think logically about what's going on or understanding how the body actually works from a holistic perspective. And even in my own practice, I get a lot of questions, especially in the fertility world, like, well, so and so took this supplement and they got pregnant right away. And it's like, well, you can follow what Mary's sister's cousin did, but they're a completely
Yes.
different person than you are. And there's so many other factors. And I've mentioned this before in a podcast, but like, I've never been to the doctor once and been asked, how much water are you drinking a day? How much
Absolutely.
sleep are you getting? Which are two vitally important things for like every function of your body. And it's like if you're not even getting those things down, well, it's probably no wonder that you're having health problems. And this is coming from somebody who was a Dr. Pepper addict who whose blood sugar was an absolute mess and had to like take sleep aids to go to bed at night because I was like wired and tired and couldn't sleep well. So I've sort of like been there, done that in
Mhm.
the whole realm of things and just really appreciate and advocate for finding someone to help you from a holistic perspective because it's completely different than just being, a number or a name on a chart and then you're like, oh, well, I mean, I had a baby at 44, so it was like I was automatically labeled as,
Oh,
geriatric or advanced maternal age
yes.
and they kept trying to give me all of these additional diagnoses just because of my age, even though I had no other reason. There was no other thing. I'm like
Yes.
healthier than most of honestly, the people I saw at the doctor's office. And they're
Yes.
trying to give me all of these things saying like, well, you've got these issues because of your age. And that did not sit well with me, which is part of how this podcast came to be.
And I can totally relate to that because my first child, we had a hard time getting pregnant with him after 2 years after our we got married. And I was 27 at the time. And then 8 years later, we got pregnant with my our daughter and I was 35 and they treated me like I was geriatric too. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, I'm only 35." But with my son going backwards with that, we had an issue with infertility and we were going to go to the doctor to get infertility treatments. But before then, I met this chiropractor who balanced my hormones and like within like 3 months I was pregnant. I was at that doctor's appointment for the infertility for the first time and they're like, "Do you know like you're pregnant already?" I'm like, "Oh snap." I'm like, "That's crazy." So then like with my daughter, it was almost the same thing. I thought I was like dying. I was like so sick and 8 years later, I mean, what else? I mean, our prayer was in our family was, "Lord, we are so good with just us three. Like if it's your will for another child, can it be before 35?" Susan, wouldn't you know? Like I was in the doctor's office like September when I was 34. And then like November 2nd is my birthday. And there we have it. Like they're like, "Oh, you're pregnant." The first thing that came to my mind was, "Oh my goodness." Like I told him we wanted to be pregnant before 35 and there you have it. So it's crazy because um those who are suffering from infertility is yeah, your diet, your rest, your sleep, your exercise, your supplements, all of that is so crucial. But again, you can go to the mainstream, but I believe and I know and I've seen even in my own life in the past is like the doctor has a necessity and they have a purpose, but the problem is they're not God. They're people run to them whatever. I literally had conversations just this week and it's only, a few days in that people are like, "Well, let me check with my doctor on that." And I'm like, "That's fine. You can check with your doctor, but your doctor's not going to know everything." Like, that's why everybody has their specialties, is because if your doctor knew everything, then they would be God, but they're not. So that's where all of us have to work and intertwine together and hear what they have to say. But unfortunately, that's like they want to get their doctor's approval for everything. And what we're dealing with, you and I, and just speaking for myself, is, we're dealing with nutrients, living foods, active enzymes, things that are a necessity to our body and not chemically induced. So I think that is the first and foremost. In we That's why I say the spiritual end of it as well, is because did you pray about it? Like, where's God leading you to? Because I know later on in my personal life, I was the healthiest I've ever been. It was like before, it was like 2020 or 21. I was running, I was healthy, I was like best shape, everything. And all of a sudden, my gallbladder had to get out. So and I prayed about like the doctors went over there. I'm like, I'm not sure if I want my gallbladder out. And it was really, really, really bad. Like there was really signs and symptoms that it was an emergency thing. And then I prayed about it and I'm like, you know what? I'm at peace with this and I'm, going to go through this. And the doctors are like, I didn't think that you were going to do this because of how I'm like, hold off. But that's why I'm not urgent. I'm not going to do things in fear. I'm not going to do things in emergency unless it's, really an emergency. Like my gallbladder, it was on like really bad. But I had peace about it. And God showed me who he was all through that. And that was my faith. I'm not going to, I'm not going to make choices by what my sight is, but by faith and walk in that.
And I appreciate that you say that because I think, well, I wholeheartedly believe that so much of the medical industry, I'm not talking about emergent care because that's
Yeah.
completely different, but just like, day to day, I'm feeling like junk. Well, let's not discount the fact that our food supply is terrible, the water supply, the air quality is awful. Like our
Yeah.
body is up to all of these. It's just attacked. And if we're not doing our best. Now, God designed it so incredibly that it takes a lot of abuse. And
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, like I actually didn't know how bad I felt until I felt good. I
Yeah.
had just accepted migraines and digestive problems as sort of just my cross to bear. And it really wasn't until I had my vaccine injury to anthrax before I deployed, and my whole health just went down the toilet. And it wasn't until that moment where I really started to look beyond what doctors were telling me. I knew what was wrong with me, and they wanted to say, it's probably your thyroid. It's probably this or probably that. And I'm like, my medical history is super, super thin. Like, there's nothing there. And now I have all this slew of issues. There's no way you can tell me. And it happened
Mhm.
the moment I almost passed out. It was terrible. I had a headache for months, joint pain, muscle fatigue. And I went down this rabbit hole just trying to understand, like, how do I get my health back? Because
Yes.
I was a health coach. I was like working out every day and I'd worked really hard to get to this point where that was just who I was because it wasn't who I was initially. And I just thought I have so much life still to live and I cannot live like this. And that's kind of when the Lord started speaking to me, and I came to the realization like God did not make a mistake when He created our bodies.
Yeah.
He wasn't like, oh, shoot, I left this or that out. Like everything that we need, He has provided to us. But
Absolutely.
we get so caught up in the fear of a diagnosis or the fear of, I mean, in the case of infertility, that you're not going to have kids, so you need to fast
Mhm.
forward everything and do IVF. My thing with IVF, well, there's a lot of things with it, but they don't they don't mentally prepare you for a lot of the questions that you're going to need to answer. Once you have embryos, what are you going to do with them afterwards?
Yes.
All the ethics things that they don't, I mean, you just want a baby yesterday, so of course you want to fast forward to whatever. But additionally, they're not looking at having like the foundations. There's a reason you're not getting pregnant. And if you're
Yeah.
not addressing those issues, you might be working with a crummy egg and not great sperm. And
Yes.
so, like, if you're not fixing that, your chances, I mean, IVF is only, 20% successful as it is. But if it's like you have all these compounding health issues, you're just spending a lot of money on something that, in my world, you could have fixed through natural ways, whether it's spiritually believing that the Lord is going to take care of you, eating the right foods, getting sleep, like all, not stressing, because that's always a thing. I see clients and they're like, I'm never going to get pregnant. The doctor said I have all these problems. And then they just lead into that fear. And if your body, in general, if your body is in a state of stress, like it's not going to bring another life form on. You're not going to, not going
Exactly.
to say like, come on, I want to have a baby. No, it's in pure survival mode. And whether it's weight loss or whatever, like if you're holding on to that, whether it's spiritually, mentally, physically holding on to stuff, like I know a lot of people whose diagnosis of cancer basically came out of living in fear. Like your body is just eating itself up because you're in this state of fear. And so I don't often like people, if you're like, I've just got to listen to what my doctor said. A lot of times they're speaking from statistics that are probably not in the positive. It's, you got to have this treatment. I had a girl on my podcast, she was like, they said, "Hey, you've got cancer. You need to come tomorrow for surgery." And she's like, "Wait, wait, wait, what? Like tomorrow? First of all, I'm out of state, and second of all, what are we talking about here? I want to understand." Like, and they were just kind of like, "Well, you'll get a free boob job out of it, so it's great. Like, what's the problem here?" And it's like, well, I didn't want that. Why am I, going and that's supposed to be my like prize? But I
Yeah.
find that that's so much of, and not all, but that's sort of the mainstream. Obviously, there's a lot of money that's tied to keeping people sick and unwell because if you're well and you don't need pharmaceuticals, then,
There is one thing that you had mentioned about, they're focused on what their doctor says. But I always say, what are you saying? Because Proverbs 18:21, it says, death and life is in the tongue. Like a lot of people come into my office and say, oh my goodness, my job is a pain in my neck, or my family's driving me crazy, or um, this is going to be the death of me. I'm like, are you listening? Are you listening to what you're saying? Or my doctor said, no, let's first talk about what you're listening to and what you're saying to yourself. And that's where it comes down the most simple things. Well, it's not simple to many because they're so programmed like that. Like you said, like for the basic foundations, the water, the sleep. Yeah, but more the words too. A lot of people forget that aspect of what are you saying to yourself? Like, thank you for me getting up today, and thank you for, Lord, I know that you're in me and you're going to get me through this day. And like things on that realm, is that's what I love to focus on, is because people are just speaking death over their life instead of life. So,
yes. It's funny, I was just in Costa Rica and they were talking about that and how the translation in English in America, it's like I broke my arm. It's like as if it's your problem, it's your fault. But otherwise, it's just like I have a broken arm. It's just like,
oh, I see
you
what you're.
have. And so it was just interesting. We were talking about that and how the language is so different, where it's, it's part of who you are. And I find that a lot too, that people will find their identity
Yes.
in their disease, disorder, diagnosis, whatever,
Yeah.
And so it's really hard to have healing if it's part of who you are.
That's huge. And that is what I speak on so much, is what is your identity and who are you relating to, or the past. So that's just a whole nother aspect of it in general. But that is my huge thing that I speak on, and I share people, like, let's find out who you are so you can start speaking a different language than what you were programmed to speak about your, whatever it was in the past, or your disease, or what is going on with your life. Yes, that's huge, huge, huge. And such a missing link today.
Totally. And
Yes.
and we kind of talked about this, but so many people put their doctors or their practitioners up on, a pedestal, almost in
Hmm.
place of God. Why do you think that that happens, and how can we actually keep our faith anchored in the great physician while we're still making wise health decisions?
It's happening because we were programmed like that. I mean, if you just think about it, I'm just going to go back to the beginning, is that, God said, let us make mankind in our image, to be fruitful and multiply and have authority. Well, first off, we're supposed to be in his image. And so when we came into the earth, we have a non-existent spirit, a dead spirit per se, of the enemy. So like a lot of people they're programmed like that. They don't know their new identity. So that's where that comes from. And that they need to be born again and just like a new creation. They're still living in their old creation because of what their parents did and what they're hearing on, the media, the everything, especially social media. And you had mentioned this at the beginning. It doesn't matter what your cousin's neighbor did, it's basically they're searching everywhere else. And I was so huge about this. I had every device, every tool and technique, every supplement. Literally, I was like to the negative in my bank accounts just because I spent so much until God said, quit searching everywhere else. Go in my word and I will direct you. And he did. And there was a device that I used that he directed me to. I had vascular insufficiency in 2019. And this device just came to me, and that is what changed my life. Um, Whenever he brought that into my life, because I had thermography done. I don't know if you're familiar with thermography, but I was feeling so good. I'm like, let me get a before and after picture. So that's all on like my website and so forth. But with that said, that that is the problem is people are so focused on what they have learned from generation after generation, and they're not, in God's word, they're not seeing um the that God is all knowing and he gives you all the resources. And sometimes, to be honest, I'm going to be very honest right now, Susan, is we're missing the point of when the scripture says, if you're sick, what does God say to do first? He says, go to the altar and ask the elders of the church to be healed. And I personally have been healed for so many things that the doctors did not know what to do, because I would go there just to get my diagnosis per se, just to hear and then do my own natural thing. But often I would go to the altar and I was healed for so many different symptoms and so forth. But also, yeah, I have to take care of myself. I have to drink my water. I have to have the sleep, supplements, and all these new things that are coming out. I pray about it first, say, God, direct me to where it is, because you are going to provide the finances for that. So I think that the shift needs to happen is to be still first and listen to, where is God guiding you to? Maybe it is this new supplement, but maybe it's this new practitioner, or maybe, I don't know. And that's where it comes into with my clients that come to me, and when I speak is like, you need to just to be still, and you need to not make your choices and decisions in fear and anxiety. You need to have peace and clarity. And where do we get that from? From God. So,
Yes, I mean I can think back to like obviously everybody knows in COVID there was a ton of fear instilled in everybody, but even to peel back that, I think that a lot of the problem is that people are not tuning into their own intuition, their own understanding of the body. And part of that, I think, is by design, because even if you think about in diet culture, we think we can just outwill our cravings. We can outwill ourselves to just eat very little. When you understand that in order to like live and breathe and do the things you want, chase your kids at the park, be a good person, you know, still feel good to connect with your spouse, after dinner or whatever, you need fuel, you need calories.
absolutely.
And so, this idea of, oh, just eat less and you'll lose weight, you're constantly working at a deficit. And your body is screaming to you, saying, I need food, I need fuel. And that usually comes in wanting sugar or carbs. Where
Absolutely.
if you were just eating like a normal person and fueling your body with good, nutritious food, doing so from a place of gratitude and not stress, you
Yeah.
won't have all of these cravings that are like your body is signaling to you that it needs something and you just think you can ignore it.
So that's where the spiritual end comes in. And because I personally suffer from gluttony in the past. And to be honest, I would stand at that cupboard and my flesh wanted 3 dozen of cookies, but I had to have the spirit be like, no, what are you trying to fulfill your desires with? So that's where I was walking the path of I was in the natural health field and I am in the natural health field and I was doing all those things until that was the realization of this is not a physical battle, it's a spiritual battle for me. So again, yes, fueling your body and what it needs, but also understanding, like you said, what your intuition and so forth, and that when I was standing at that cupboard on my, second dozen of cookies, third dozen of cookies, like my, God inside me is like, no, you need to come to me to fulfill you. So like different things like that, or you need to go and get some nourishment, get a good salad, your supplements, your vitamins, your minerals, whatever it is. But first, it's always, and this is just me personally in my life and the people I speak with, is that has to be first in my life because if he's not first in my life, then I make these horrible decisions. And yeah, I will eat that huge piece of cake, you know, to reward me, to entertain me when I'm bored, things like that. And that's kind of where I am in my own personal life, but also in my practice too.
And I can relate to that because I spent many years being an emotional eater. I would eat when I was happy, I would eat when I was sad,
Oh,
anxious.
yes.
And so it for me it really was, and when as a health coach, it was a whole other thing because I knew better. I couldn't do better. And so yes, if you're seeking fulfillment in food, in money, in relationships, in gambling, in alcohol, whatever, if you're seeking fulfillment in those things, you'll never get it. It's funny because in our household, we kind of have a rule that you can't have any sort of sweets or anything until you've had protein. Always prioritize protein. So it'll slow the blood sugar roller coaster. So my 4 year old, she'll say, I'm hungry. And she'll say, Can I have a popsicle? And I'll say, That's not going to solve your hunger problem. And so she's gotten to the point where she's like, Is this going to solve my hunger problem? And I'll have to say no, because you can eat the popsicle, but you're still going to be hungry because you didn't get any nutrients that you need to fill it. In the same way that if you're going to things other than the Lord for nourishment, you're not going to find it. And so for me, it was very, very healing to view food not as the enemy, but as something that helped me have the energy to do all the things that I wanted to do and not be, the screaming mom who was too tired to play with her kids at the end of the day.
Yes.
And so, I mean, I think that's so important is really understanding that fulfillment comes from the Lord and you're not going to find it anywhere else.
Absolutely. And that's why those who put him first will seek, and Susan might be coming to their mind, or Renee might be coming to their mind, or this podcast in general would be just an avenue of, oh, there is a different way. Maybe my faith isn't strong enough. I love your title is because, faith is first, and that's where they have to go.
And part of it was funny. I was like, I can't believe this isn't already taken. But the other thing was there's so much fear and so much noise out there that, yes, you really do need to strengthen your faith first and foremost. That's just what I found personally. I mean, even you and I were talking beforehand about COVID and even vaccines. Like I had an injury and was searching, desperately searching for answers. And the Lord revealed to me some things that I felt like, well, I'm taking care of my body and doing the things that I need to do. Fortunately, I was able to do a metals detox, which by the way. The anthrax vaccine has like 600 micrograms of aluminum in it, and anything over 25 micrograms is considered toxic,
Mhm.
except for in vaccines, they're immune. But so I was fortunate that the Lord led me to healing and I was completely healed. But it also led me down a rabbit hole of research. And you and I were talking about this. That it's like, you know, I'm not coming from a place of anti-vax. Like, if that's what you feel works for you, my issue is people are not given informed consent. I mean, they'll give you a pamphlet at the doctor, maybe if you're lucky. Hey, here's the information about the flu shot, but they don't actually tell you.
And who reads it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I do now because I almost lost my whole health over it. But um, in so many, like, we chose not to vaccinate our two younger kids. Like, for one, the Hep B vaccine that they give to newborn babies, like, if you actually understood why that's part of the vaccine schedule, you would be appalled and upset because it's just based off some theory that it's going to help eradicate Hep B in homeless populations, even though it's never been scientifically proven to affect, like, even if you have it as a baby, it may not even work when you're an adult. So that whole idea was just based off of something they never even tested. So I promise you that I don't have it. My children aren't sexually active. So why am I going to inject them with a bunch of
Exactly.
aluminum? But that's the thing is they don't educate you on that. So I always recommend to people who are like, because I get a lot of grief, like, how are your kids living? I was like, well, my 4-year-old has been sick once in her entire life. And
Hmm.
it was when she first started daycare and she had 7 different bugs. We treated it naturally and with some antibiotics. We added in some probiotics to help offset that. And she was good in 2 days. And I don't know of any other people in my circle that are complaining that I didn't get vaccinated who can say that their child's only been sick once.
Yeah. I agree because my kids also, and I was an anti-vaxxer back in the day when my son was born. And ironically, it wasn't ironic, but um, I knew I was very convicted, like, no, don't vaccinate my son. Well, when he was 7, he started having seizures. Like, if I would have vaccinated him, I would have blamed the vaccinations. Okay, just a side note. But what that showed me is that, again, that was a strengthen of my faith, and he had overcome that and so forth. But my kids hardly ever really were sick. And if you think about it, there's 2 points that I want to get to here is like your immune system is in your gut. You know, your immune, your melatonin, your uh, T4 converted to T3. So like all of that is in your gut. So just a healthy gut in general. So eating healthy and so forth, especially my first son, my first child. So I was seeing all these people that were questioning, oh, like your kids aren't vaccinated. And once again, I was anti-vax back then, but God changed my heart and it's like, you're not the one that you're supposed to be pointing people to me and then let them be closer to me, let me guide them. Now, when COVID came and my clients came in, I had so many injured clients that they said well, or they would ask my opinion. I had missionaries, sorry, I had missionaries come to me and say, Renee, what should I do? You know, I don't get vaccinated. I'm so confused. And I said, well, did you pray about it? Well, I don't know if we can travel into this other country. I said, listen, if you prayed about it and God said, go get it done and you feel peace about it, okay, great. But if he says don't you think he's going to make a way for you to go to that other country anyway? I'm like, you need to be at peace with it. You need to go to him because I can't tell you what to do. I mean, my husband didn't, none of us got it. And God sustained us all through that. You know, he still kept his job and, I did what I was doing. But that's where the strength of the faith is when the clients came into me that are injured, they're like, Renee, I can tell you right now that it was all in fear that I got that. Just exactly what we have been talking about is fear. And that doesn't come from God. It comes from the enemy. So how about like, Hosea 4:6 says, My people are destroyed because they don't know me. That's a New Living Translation. Well, how about we get to know God so we stop being destroyed? And then once we know Him, He's going to direct us to what we need to do. I mean, we use that verse so well about the knowledge of, like, let's say vaccines. No, God wants us to seek Him and know Him first. And then He will give you the resources and the directions of whatever else there needs to be, because there's so many of my clients in the past, whenever they knew my kids weren't vaccinated, that they would be like, well, aren't you worried about this or not? Well, if you have your kids vaccinated, you should have peace about that. Or if you don't have your kids vaccinated, you should have peace about that. Like, and even my own family members, nieces and so forth, that would come and ask me questions, is I'm like, if you choose to vaccinate, then you need to not be concerned about, like, what's going to happen after that. Like, let's say they're injured, you're still going to love them, like you're going to have faith that God is going to provide for them. I don't know if that all makes sense, but it's like, I can't tell you what to do, but here's what I can tell you. I can educate you why I didn't. But my goal is to bring you toward, go to the Lord and ask Him, because there's so, think about it, and I don't, this is like a twist of things, is it's whenever I was I couldn't breastfeed my children for a long time because I wasn't producing enough, because I didn't know enough to produce. But I was going into like a depression, and then the Lord's like, Renee, I will sustain them. Like, yeah, baby food isn't healthy. Like the powder stuff, it's not the best source of nutrients. But I was having such a hard time on myself, going into a deep depression, that I'm like, you know what? There's a lot of kids out there that are on powder formulas, but it's what my choices, my next set of choices are going to be. Let's feed them real food as soon as I can, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was in the same boat with my 4-year-old not being able to produce and having just this whole stress, which is probably why I didn't produce, because I had all this like pressure on myself and from people about like, oh, you got to breastfeed and it's all, fortunately, I got a lot more education this time
Yes.
around, my 4-month-old, that I'm like going strong. And that's been a whole other emotional thing for me. But even just talking about like the fear aspect, I mean, the Bible tells us 365 times not to fear, right? So that's like every day we should not fear. And that's always my biggest thing, is equipping people with the knowledge to make decisions that are not based off of fear, but are based off of facts, which is what I'm so passionate about with this podcast, is getting some information out there that may be harder to find when it comes to health decisions, or there's a lot of noise out there.
Mhm.
And
And they
so
have to renew their minds too, like
exactly,
constantly.
exactly. And so, I mean, you've walked through different things, infertility and thyroid problems and even emergency surgeries, but how did your faith grow in those trials, and then how did that shape the way that you serve others now?
Just like we had talked about at the beginning, even like with my son and having him having seizures and so forth, is um in the thyroid issue, is they wanted to radiate my thyroid after I had my daughter, but I needed to rebalance my hormones, and I knew something wasn't right and unsettled about that. And it wasn't something in an emergency. So again, if I feel chaos within inside of me, to have that force to make that decision like soon, because the doctor's like, well, what are you gonna do? You're just gonna just get worse. Things like that. Once again, everything that we had talked about all throughout this podcast is that, what are you talking to yourself about? So that's how my faith was, is when I'm in the word, I know the word is renewing my mind, instilling in my heart. And God is not going to hide what I need to know. And He is my ultimate provider, and He is my ultimate healer. And how I the last question was like what I'm doing right now. Is that what you said? Is that's everything that I learned in my life, is to help prepare and to help clients and just people in general to help them first know their identity, go back to Christ, and strengthen their faith, because that is the top and foremost thing that you need, is because whatever's going to happen down the road, and this is a came to mind too, is when people are pregnant, they're like, well, as long as they're healthy. I'm like, listen, you're going to love that child whether they're healthy or not. I mean, it's a sad thought, but think about it, is that what are you going to do? Say, please reinsert my child in my belly until it is healthy? Like, I'm just going to be raw and honest with you. Is like, no, you pray, yeah, you pray for, your child to be healthy and so forth, but you have to have faith even before that child even comes. Like, you cannot determine your God because of your circumstance. You have to know your God no matter what the circumstance is. And that's what I um, coach and help my clients for, is, hey, let's know our God so it doesn't matter the circumstance, because then you'll hear him clearly.
In different like personal development scenarios have read, but basically in the my previous world or whatever in weight loss, it's like a lot of people will say like, I'll be happy when I'm
Mhm.
at this weight, or I'll be happy when I hit this goal or whatever. And to that point, like you need to find happiness and contentment in the present circumstance, because I've had people that their whole focus was on weight loss and they hit the goal and didn't know what to do after that. So they ended up gaining it all back and having to start over again. So it's like you can't put your faith, your intention,
Identity.
your whatever
Yeah.
into whatever that goal is. You have to have something more. And that's what
And
the
that
Lord is.
and that goes all back when we talked about gluttony and everything, is what are you trying to fulfill? Because he is enough. He is fulfilling enough, and to live this life, for him.
Amen. Well, if somebody's listening right now and they feel stuck, either in sickness or fear, what's the first step? And I think I know what it is, but what's the first step that you'd really encourage them, sort of as a takeaway from this episode, just to start walking in health God's way?
Reevaluate and look at, what are you doing now? Again, it's going to be a review, is what are you speaking? What are you saying? What are you thinking? All of that goes down to the root. Where is your faith? Where's your relationship with Christ? And that's where you need to get alone with him, intimacy with him, and just be still and listen. Journal what he's saying. Don't rush it. If you need a prayer partner or somebody um at the elder of at your church or anything like that, is you need to stop thinking what would people think and do what God says. That's what I would tell them, is the first step, is stop. In Luke 9:23, he says, deny yourself, carry your cross, and follow me. Let's start denying ourselves, and who cares what people think about our decisions, if we vaccinate or not vaccinate? Who cares what our decisions, if we choose a natural realm for our health or not a natural realm for our health? Who cares what people think? This is what God says. And that's why I love whenever people ask me about my choices and decisions, because that's what my God says. That's what he says. And that's what I'm going to believe. So whether I don't see it by sight yet, I'm going to have faith that it is going to be, I am going to be whole and complete. I am going to be healed of this, that, or whatever, because he had already healed it. So I just have to strengthen my faith for that. And that's my answer to that question.
I love it. And I would love if you would tell us a little bit more about your book so that people can find that,
Oh,
and how to
thanks.
connect with you if they are like, yes, sister, I'm picking up what you're putting down and I want to connect with you. How would they do that?
So the book is called Refined for Revival. It's your purpose and God's plan. And basically, it was the goal is for lukewarm believers, is because that I wasn't seeing and hearing and believing what I was reading, that the word was living and active, but it wasn't living and active in my life nor anybody else's life that I was surrounded by. There were few. So the book is to encourage those who may be seeking, or those who like they don't know the word isn't living and active in their lives, and just encourage them to be that ambassador for God, to get their mind renewed, to really um, deny themselves and live for Him.
Amazing. And if somebody wants to connect with you, how would they do that?
It would be refinedforrevival.com. There's a lot of free resources and teachings on there, or revivalhealthlife.com. And that's the health aspect of that as well.
And I'll make sure that that's all in the show notes, so that people can connect with you. Before we jump off, is there anything else that you want to add, or maybe that we didn't cover that you would like to share?
No, I think that we covered so much, and I just thank you again, and just encourage your listeners to, have hope. Don't be hopeless. We're supposed to not have despair. Keep that faith, because you're going to have your breakthrough.
I love that. Yes, hope is what I really hope. Hope. Uh, this podcast can be a light to other people, because depending on who you surround yourself with, sometimes it's hard, if your decisions are not the same as what they would choose for you. Or, I mean, even if like you're trying to be healthy, but your spouse is not on board, and like, how do you overcome that? And just really to encourage other people um, to have hope, because that's like what it's all about. So thank you so much for taking the time to share your wisdom and love and light. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Testimony Thursday on Faith Over Pharma. If that story stirred something in you, share it with a friend who's ready to believe that miracles still happen. Got a story of your own? Head over to faithoverpharma.org. I'd love to hear it. And if this podcast is helping you see things differently, leaving a quick review helps us reach more people who are done with band-aids and hungry for truth. Until next time, keep questioning the narrative, protecting your peace, and walking in the truth that your body was made to heal.